a lot of shit has happened and changed. I mean, you've known me since I was like 18 years old.
Yeah.
You know, why don't we kind of just start with like how we first met, you know, and all that kind of shit. And because like basically I was living in Seattle at the time growing weed. We kind of had a mutual friend that we'll talk about later. This guy John, who was member on Cannabis World.
Yeah.
And you started up and you were OrgnKid and you're the dude showing everybody your ass in a room full of OG, telling everybody you're getting $7,000 to $8,000 a pound and no one really believes you. So, you know, tell me a little bit about what was going on back then for you.
Well, when I first started growing, I started growing with these other guys, and their weed was all right, but not very good at all. And it was hard to get, 4,000 for it and stuff like that. And I had met some other kids earlier in my life, and I ran into them again later on by accident, and they introduced me to some friends and were like, hey, we can give you a better strain. So they gave me the Bubba Kush, this guy Bernie. And at that point, I started growing it out, and at first I was selling it at $6,000 a pound to people. And I met this kid, JBD Mike. He works at Nug now.
Is JBD meaning Jerome Baker Designs the pipes, or no?
It's because he wanted. What happened? There was a Jerome Baker contest at one of these weed stores, and he came into the store. He made a weed cake to enter because they were having a bake-off.
Got it.
So he won a big Jerome Baker bong there.
Yep.
And I met him there, and we started talking. And after that, he started buying weed from me, and he was telling me, oh, I can get this price, that price. So at some point, I raised my price up to $7,200 because I couldn't keep the weed in hand. Like
For the Bubba.
For the Bubba.
Yeah, and this was late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was selling just off the hands. Like there was no, like I was buying everybody's crop. Like I took the clone that I got, and we had 6 other houses. So I was going to all the guys.
All in the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the guys that had started me growing in one of the houses, and gave them the cut so that the clone was in all of our hands, but I get all the weed back.
Yep, yep.
So at that point, I'm paying them $5,000 a pound to grow it.
Great deal.
And I'm taking it and selling it for $7,200. And after that, with Josh D and them, they saw that, and they were selling their weed at first, their OG, for like $350 to $400 a zone.
And the Bubba and the OG came from them, essentially, by way of this mutual friend,
yes.
Bernie, essentially.
Bernie, yeah.
Right? And both your OG and Bubba cut came from him.
No, I got the OG cut by buying it from Josh's partner, Sean.
Got it. Okay. And Bernie had gotten it from the Bubba from them in a previous transaction of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he was in with that whole crowd. Like
yeah.
It was they were a tight circle of people, like 8 or 9 guys that hung out in the circle. There was Blake and Kenji from Be Real.
Yep.
And Josh D and this guy Doobie and a couple other guys, that were all in this little crew, and Kodiak. And Kodiak now, he has some big grow out in Oklahoma, where they're they were like 750 acres of flavor. I don't know if you remember seeing that.
Oh yeah, like 500 acres of flavors or something.
Growing,
yeah.
Growing. That's those guys.
Okay, so he was an original OG member as well.
Yeah.
Essentially, that the California crew of OG, let's call it, because there's also the Florida Josh connection as well, which is kind of not either of our stories at least involved.
Those were all those kids that were together, and my friend Doobie was working for Josh's partner, and he told me he could get me the OG cut. I met with them, and they wanted 5 pounds of weed back grown. Basically, it's 8,000 a pound, so $40,000.
Yep.
And he wanted like $5,000 or something up front, So I gave him that money, and I got the cut, and then started doing that, and then paid them off for it, and was able to grow it, sell it, and I made seeds of it after that because I figured I paid so much for it that I could do what I wanted with it, kind of, and pissed everyone off over there, but.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you had purchased it.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing. A transaction is a transaction at the end of the day. It's another thing if you make a deal with somebody and say, "Hey, I'm going to do this," but you know, whatever your arrangement is, a purchase is a purchase.
Yeah, they never said anything about not making seeds or selling or anything.
They weren't even thinking about that, probably. I mean, at that time, well, first of all, making feminized seeds was brand spanking new in terms of technological information. Early 2000s, we had only learned about that in the maybe late 90s through, I think it was Skunkman Sam that kind of dropped breadcrumbs online about it. And then finally Hybe, who's actually local here in Oregon, the guy that did all the breeding with the ABC, the Australian Bastard Cannabis. You remember that stuff? He was the first one to make the Elite X Elite spray, right? That was being sold on Heaven's Stairway, right? You remember that product. And that was probably, was that the first product you used, or did you make your own?
No, there was a girl named Golden Eyes online.
I remember her, yeah.
And she was from up here in Eugene. And I worked with her to where she made the spray out of gibberellic acid.
Got it.
And then did the work for me with me on the plants because she had an open room where I didn't have space.
Got it.
So I took plants out there, had her do that.
So you had come up from LA, brought the plants to Golden Eyes in Oregon, and she did the feminization for the first Cali Kush seeds.
Yeah.
Got it. And those were, what were those seeds that you released?
Those were they called them ogres.
That's right, ogres.
But it's supposed to be OG.
Yep, but OG apostrophe ERS. Yeah. And you'll see people continue to this day confuse that with the Ogre Kush, which was like a Sensi Star clone that got sold at the clubs down there. Totally different thing. But the Ogers was basically Ogers Kush S1. That was the first ones being first OG Kush seeds sold online or probably anywhere in the world.
Well, before that, C3 tried to release the OG S1s, and all the ones that he released hermed out.
I'm pretty sure you sold seeds before he did.
He tried to sell them off of Heaven's Stairway.
Yeah, that was after you had released them on Cannabis World, on CBay though.
Okay, I thought it was right before me.
I don't think so, because they received their clone from you. That's correct, right? Yeah. I don't think they beat you to the punch on that, because their product was being sold on the actual Heaven's Stairway website where you could purchase the seeds. Yeah. And I remember as a fucking auction hound seeing your auctions on CBay, right? Or your products being sold as you, probably by John.
Well, actually, I went through Gypsy.
Gypsy was on CBay though, because Gypsy wasn't on Cannabis World.
On the first ones that went to, I called Gypsy Nirvana.
Okay.
And I packed them in the plastic signs that you put out like for your front yard for sale.
I remember
signs.
that. Yeah.
Filled them all in there, put little
cotton swabs in
the end, taped it all up, put pictures on it, glued it on the front so it looked like a kid's picture and shit.
Okay.
Packaged it up and sent it off to Europe. And then before that, I was talking to people on Cannabis World and Overgrow, and I was selling clones or selling seeds that way to people too.
Well, and that's how 3Cs got their clone, because 3Cs was Ghost and two other members essentially, right? Yes. That became a seed company.
Yeah.